Hi, I'm Elizabeth.
Hi, I'm Lenore.
And I'm Madison. Today, we're talking about de-extinction.
Part 1, Contemporary Issues. Among all of the current hot topics in the scientific realm, de-extinction is arguably the coolest one. It is such a complex issue. There are positive and negative consequences to our potential actions. Recreating extinct species and even extinct environments is not an easy task. Who will benefit from bringing back extinct species, and more importantly, who will suffer? All of these questions and more will be answered in this contemporary perspective of de-extinction. Currently, the only people who are stakeholders are the scientists who are working on figuring out if de-extinction is even plausible. Since it has not been widely put into practice, no one else has been greatly affected, yet. However, this is no reason for us not to care. Many experts believe de-extinction is inevitable, despite many ethical concerns that I will discuss later. So even if we do not put woolly mammoths back onto the planet, humans will be impacted by our own actions at some point. Although we may feel that de-extinction is too far away for us to worry about, political, religious, and ethical concerns are being raised. Are we trying to play God by doing this? How is corporate greed playing into this decision? If we are spending all of our time and money bringing back previously extinct species, will our current conservation efforts, lacking as they may be, decrease even further? Similarly, what will happen to the Endangered Species Act? Let's take a look. There are undoubtedly many benefits associated with de-extinction. It is believed that damaged ecosystems would be able to thrive if species that recently went extinct were reintroduced. One great example of this that happened right in our backyard was the reintroduction of wolves into Yellowstone. The entire Yellowstone ecosystem flourished after the wolves came back. Everything is connected, and when one keystone species goes extinct, the whole ecosystem will fail. Similarly, many scientists believe that reintroducing woolly mammoths would be a type of checks and balances system for us in terms of our carbon dioxide emissions. Another benefit to de-extinction is that we will be able to learn about evolution with previously extinct species now in our hands. Perhaps one of the most thought-provoking arguments is this. If humans are causing the sixth extinction that experts believe we are undergoing currently, should we not try to bring back some of these species if we are able to do so? All of these benefits sound amazing. However, there is much more to this story. The negative consequences of de-extinction are just as surprising. The ecosystem theory is the perfect way to describe the consequences. On the more religious hand, why are humans trying to play God? Many things may certainly go wrong, and we definitely need to consider everything before we make any first moves. Considering worldwide human health, these previously extinct animals may bring back diseases and viruses with them from the grave, to which we are not accustomed. From the more scientific perspective, if these animals have gone extinct, their prey may have seen the same fate. If this is not the case, we can be sure that their ecosystems have changed, meaning that the species' role in the food web will have also changed. And a compelling political argument that was alluded to earlier is this. If we develop this new technology to be able to revive previously extinct species, will this just become an excuse to develop or continue our reckless behaviors? These are all important questions that we need to ask before taking a next step in this process. And while the issue of de-extinction is incredibly complex, these overall main ideas are where we need to start when discussing this topic. The pros may seem to outweigh the cons at first, but we must ask ourselves, as a society, who and what will suffer as a result of our actions.
Part 2, Historical Context. De-extinction is about as cool as it sounds, but it's a very controversial issue, even to this day. In the past, scientists have hit roadblock after roadblock, but with modern technology, de-extinction is achievable. One of the many reasons for resurrection ecology is that it would actually improve the environment. With climate change and humans changing the Earth rapidly in a geological time frame, scientists believe that some species that were major parts of their ecosystems died off too early, thus leaving the ecosystem unbalanced. We've seen species reintroduction before, like wolves into Yellowstone, completely change seemingly unrelated parts of the environment. Once the wolves were reintroduced, river quality improved because the wolves fed on the deer. The deer ate the plants protecting the banks of the river, so with less mouths feeding on the plants, river erosion was reduced. With more plants, there were more niches for other species to thrive, like beavers, eagles, and songbirds. De-extinction is just one way to help heal the earth we've harmed. In this podcast, I'll focus on two extinct species, the thylacine, also known as the Tasmanian tiger, and the passenger pigeon. While the thylacine was commonly known as a Tasmanian tiger, it was not a tiger at all, but rather a marsupial. A marsupial is a type of animal that raises its young in a pouch, like a kangaroo. The thylacine was native to Australia, and in the past, about 25 million years ago, there were 5 distinct kinds of these wonderful creatures. Until about 4,000 years ago, when the dingoes were reintroduced to Australia, the thylacine's diversity and population declined due to competition. The introduction of dingoes into thylacine territory is significant because thylacines and dingoes are very similar both in body shape and diet. Not only did the dingoes drive up competition, but the Australian government encouraged the killing of thylacines. The last thylacine, Benjamin, died in captivity due to exposure on September 7, 1936. The thing about these unique creatures is that there are people alive today who remember the thylacine. They're not like the Indominus rex or velociraptors from Jurassic World, but rather recent extinctions in which we have literal film of. People argue that because of our hand in the thylacine's extinctions, we have a moral obligation to bring them back, much like the passenger pigeon. Passenger pigeons were basically hunted to extinction. Sound familiar? People recounted that passenger pigeon flocks could be so big that they would block out the sun. They're an easy source for meat because they weren't that hard to kill and they were abundant. They couldn't go extinct, right? Wrong. It wasn't until the 1870s that people started to show concern about passenger pigeon extinction. On September 1st, 1914, the last passenger pigeon, Martha, passed away in the Cincinnati Zoo. These 2 species are important to de-extinction, not only because they are recent extinctions, but especially because the passenger pigeon is a good candidate for resurrection ecology. The passenger pigeon has a close living relative, known as the band-tailed pigeon. This means that the passenger pigeon and the band-tailed pigeon have similar DNA. Thankfully, to the efforts of scientists in the past, modern scientists have usable sources of DNA for the passenger pigeon. Finding usable DNA sources for extinct species has been a difficult process in the past, but with modern technology, it's easier. Reviving an extinct species isn't as easy as bippity-boppity-boo, but rather an intense scientific process utilizing more than one field of study. To revive the passenger pigeon, scientists will identify the DNA that makes it different from the band-tailed pigeon, which is not as easy as it sounds. Then, in simple terms, they will mix the DNA with the band-tailed pigeon's DNA and turn it into an egg that will be artificially inseminated into a female chicken. Before the 1990s, this was just science fiction, but after the cloning of Dolly the sheep, resurrection ecology became much more plausible. It has been a collaborative effort between many scientists across generations, and their hard work has paid off, making de-extinction an option. With successes like the gastric brooding frog and the bantang, science should give itself a pat on the back for making what many thought impossible, possible.
Part 3, Reframing the Issue. 2 extinct animals that I will be discussing today are the woolly mammoth and the passenger pigeon. Animals today that have similar traits to the mammoth is the Asian elephant, and for the passenger pigeon it's the band-tailed pigeon. Now the question is asked, will we ever see either of these extinct species ever in our lifetimes? Some people may consider inserting the genes of extinct animals into related species of today as playing God. But aside from that, if we could bring them back, could we have the possibility not only saving today's species from going extinct, but help save our planet? According to our lectures and Michael Pierce, the Earth is facing climate changes like never before, and with species slowly nearing extinction, should we allow for de-extinction? With the technologies and methods that we have come up with in the last couple decades, we could have a future for de-extinction. So, should we really bring species back from extinction, or are we playing God? Could this be a potential setting for a real-life Jurassic Park? If we do everything right, we will not be creating an exact species of the woolly mammoth or even the passenger pigeon. According to David Schultz and Elizabeth Quill's interview with Beth Shapiro, it is impossible for us to come up with an exact species of the woolly mammoth. We can only produce something that will be very, very, very similar to it, or any species for that matter. For the question about playing God, it all depends on how you view this whole matter. There's no definite answer for it. Now, could we see a real-life Jurassic Park? Though it would be pretty awesome to see dinosaurs roam the face of the earth again. But Revive and Restore says that sadly, the way that de-extinction works, we are unable to bring back even a species similar to any dinosaur. In an article by Elizabeth Quill in the Chicago Tribune, there are two ways that de-extinction works. We could take the DNA from a recently extinct species and place them into a close relative. This way we could form a hybrid, not an exact clone. The difference here is that to produce a clone, you must have the living species cells, not extinct. This hybrid would give birth to an offspring, and over time, we would only be getting closer and closer to whatever species we are intending to bring back, but never the exact one. The second method would be backbreeding. When we use this method, we do not extract anything. Simply, all there needs to be done is looking for similar features and traits of species that we are trying to bring back and use those traits and have the two species reproduce. A downside to de-extinction in that of Mintier's article of The Perils of De-Extinction claims with climate changes and the endangerment of animals today, the thoughts of de-extinction makes things sound more cheerful. If we do not learn from our mistakes, then de-extinction in the future can become normalized, meaning that if species go extinct, we would not have to worry about it because we have the technologies to bring them partially back. The whole concept of bringing back species is great, but if we run into this scenario, then we could be taking advantage of our abilities, and that would be the talk of playing God. But we are doing this for the purpose of helping species and our planet, not so we can lock them up in cages. That's how we would end up in the Jurassic Park setting. In the article by David Schultz, he explains that if we bring back the woolly mammoths, we could bring back the grasslands, which would make our Earth a lot healthier. But first, we have to get there. We are slowly building new technologies and furthering our research with this kind of thing, and there could be a potential future for extinct animals. We could also save those species that are nearly going extinct today. This is done by collecting the genes from them beforehand and then inserting them into related species. We are all about helping our planet and doing the right thing. So if we keep pursuing this research, there would not only be benefits for this species, but for our planet too.